Welcome to Evolve and Elevate with Erica. I am so happy to be here with you all this week. I know for the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of different things that have been happening, but I am excited to be here with you all here tonight. So, as we kind of dive into it tonight, let me take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Errica Bishop, emotional intelligence self mastery coach, relationship strategist, and here to share with you on tonight. As you are coming in, if you could please share with at least 5 people, make sure you tag someone and also like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. As we're talking tonight, and I won't be here with you long, but I hope that you're having an amazing Labor Day tonight. It's amazing that we're already in the month of September. This year has truly gone by very quickly, and I know that we have so many things to be thankful for. So I hope you had a wonderful time with your family as we have already kicked off football season. So for many of you football fans that are out there, I hope you're having an amazing time with your family and your friends, and you are rooting for your teams, and you've had some great meals set aside tonight, had some good times cooking out with your family and friends, and you're enjoying yourself. So, as we kind of dive into it tonight, I'm glad to have you with me. We're still talking about how do we rebuild our families and rebuilding our families from brokenness. And if you've been with us over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about moving out of a place of dysfunction. How do we identify those different places of dysfunction? How do those things hinder us? How do we move past those places? And once we've identified those places of dysfunction, what do we need to do to rebuild from those places where dysfunction have maybe even crippled us in our family unit? Because even in our best intentions, right? Even in our best intentions, we as parents, as spouses, as brothers, sisters, family members in general, we have not always been perfect, and we have made some very, sometimes bad mistakes, and we have done some things that have not been the best choices, and they have caused some hurt and some harm to many of the people that we say that we love. And when we think about things that have been generational, things that have come throughout our families, and we have repeated cycles, and we get to a place where we have decided, you know what, it is time to change. It is time to do something different. And I want to be the one to be the person to make the change. We have to make sure that we are the ones that stop that particular cycle, right? So, as we go about this process, how do we rebuild a family unit? How do we rebuild these relationships that really matter to us, especially when it comes to um, our children, especially when it comes to our spouses, especially when it comes to our siblings? These are people that we really do care about, and we want to operate in that place of forgiveness. We want to be forgiven. We want to also forgive others, but understand that sometimes that may be a situation that that person may no longer be here, and we don't get that opportunity to rebuild that relationship. But for those that are here with us, the first question is, how much do you value that relationship, right? And that's an honest question you have to ask yourself. And we remember that, and as harsh as it may sound, but we also have to remember that forgiveness does not necessarily require access, because we don't necessarily know the degree of the level of what may have happened. Everyone does not know all of the details, um, and what it may have been. But we also know that, well, I would say in addition to that, I don't want to say but, because I don't want to remove what was said. In addition to that, forgiveness is very important for self. It's important for me to forgive someone who may have done something to me, right? For my own health, for my own growth, for me to continue to move forward, for my own personal healing. Let's first start there. So I need to heal. So forgiveness is required for that. But it does not mean that that individual has to be a part of my life, especially if abuse has been a part of the situation. Okay. You don't have to ask for an abuser to come back into your life. That is not what we're saying. For someone that honestly wants to repair a relationship, when we think about a brother and sister that may have had an out or an altercation or a situation or a misunderstanding, and we have gone years or months without speaking to each other. And it wasn't a situation of abuse, but it was something that was hurtful. And it was something that um, caused some wounds. And we do want to have that relationship. How do we begin to repair the breach? Okay. First, we have to both agree that yes, we do both value the relationship and we do both want to move forward and we both are willing to put in the work to repair the relationship. All right, let's set the stage. The next part is there does have to be ownership of who owns what as far as what happened. It does not mean that you necessarily have to dig all the way back into it to make it a situation. I want to put it back in your face because I want you to be as hurt as I was. That's not necessarily what that has to be. But it does mean, do you understand and own and accept that this is how I felt as I expressed, this is how this came across, or this is how I feel. Yes, I do. I do apologize for what I did X, Y, and Z. Okay. And as we move through that, then we get in a space where we're having a conversation of how do we now rebuild by setting boundaries so that we don't repeat this situation again, because this is the reason why it hurts so much. Because when we really have the conversation and we're truly owning what we need to own within this space of repairing and really dig down to the truth of the matter, we really begin to see that there are layers to this thing. We really begin to see that sometimes we're holding on to things that may have happened 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And it's things that we have been adding from one thing to another, and we have been connecting from one thing to another. And the big blow up in the kitchen over the macaroni at Thanksgiving had nothing to do with it at all. It wasn't about the macaroni in the kitchen at Thanksgiving. It was about the fact that you may have felt dismissed by your brother or your sister, or it may be jealousy there, or it may be something that they said some time ago that hurt your feelings and they thought it was a joke and it wasn't, and they brushed it off in a dismissive way. And they continue to do that publicly with people, but you haven't spoken up to let them know that that's something that you don't appreciate. You see where I'm going? Because oftentimes we don't voice early because we haven't set boundaries. And we have these things that repeatedly happen. And over time, it begins to grow and it begins to fester. And then all of a sudden, here you are at Thanksgiving, and the person asks, well, who made the macaroni and cheese? And then you upset because you made the macaroni and cheese, but it's not about the macaroni and cheese and the fact that you made it. It's about all the other stuff that you're thinking about that's attached to it. It happens. Y'all know it. Y'all know it. Y'all were there when it happened. It's about everything else that happened prior to that. When she used something that belonged to you and lost it, didn't ask to borrow it, and when you were looking for it, they lost it, but it meant something to you, but didn't mean as much to them. But then they act like it didn't matter to them. So that made you mad, but you never said anything about it. You said, oh, that's okay. But you were really fuming about it and you didn't have a conversation. So you're still mad about that over the years. So how do we repair the brokenness? Over time, there are times that we're going to have to sit back and really peel back the layers and really take some time to have some conversation and say, this is really truthfully what it is. And sometimes when we really think about it, after 15, 20 years later, we have a conversation with ourselves and say, you know what? I apologize to you for holding on to it for so long. I don't even know why I held on to it for so long. And sometimes when we get to a point where we really understand each other's apology language, everybody has an apology language. If you read the book about the 5 love languages by the wonderful author Gary Chapman, he also has a book about the apology language. And in the book, The Apology Language, it talks about how everyone has a different way, innately by their own personality, just like our love language or innately by our personality, how apologies are received. Now, if I had a sister and I had an out with a sister, and my language as a person may be, well, let me go and buy you something and I give it as a gift. But hers may be, I need to hear you say what you did. But I give the gift and say, I'm sorry, here's a gift. But I don't necessarily say, I apologize for this is what I did. Please accept my apology. And I just give the gift and walk away with it. They don't necessarily deem that as an apology. They just deem that as I just gave a gift. Where another person may be, well, let's just go and get something to eat. We good. We talked about it. Let's go have dinner. But for another person, that may not be their language. So when we really dissect and have a conversation, I'm looking at my notes too, and we have a conversation, how do we rebuild? First, we have to acknowledge the issue. Okay. We've put it out there on the table. We've been honest and we haven't left any stones unturned. And this is one rule of thumb that I have when it comes to having what I call character conversations is this. If I have to have a conversation with someone else about a conversation that I should have had with you, I didn't say everything I should have said at the moment I should have talked about it. If you need to discuss it again with someone else and you had that party in front of you and you had an opportunity to say it, and I have to talk about it again, that means that I didn't say everything I needed to say. So when we lay everything out on the table, and please understand, it's going to sting a little bit. It may be uncomfortable. And we have to be okay to understand that everything may not be resolved in one sitting. And we also may agree to disagree. But the matter at that moment is for each party to be heard and to set boundaries within the conversation. I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak without being interrupted, and you're going to give me an opportunity to speak without being interrupted. And if we can't agree at that space, then we don't need to go any further. Now, when we can agree to that, and for me personally, I will literally take notes so that I don't interrupt you. If there's a point or a situation I need to go back to and I need to ask questions about, I will literally take notes. And when you're done speaking, then we'll go back through it. Because out of respect, I committed not to interrupt you, and I will ask that person to do the same. So we acknowledge what the issue is and we discuss it. Of course, having honest and open communication. Now, this does not have to be very stoic. It doesn't have to be very egregious. But depending upon the nature of the conversation, you may need to have a mediator. But I will always suggest, and I had this in the last one that I did about 2 or 3 weeks ago, similar situation, and I shared some of the same information. I would suggest going to a place that you don't necessarily have to revisit. Meaning, when I think about location, have a common location that each one of you does not necessarily have to revisit again just for the sake of memory, depending upon the nature of the conversation. Now, if it's family, you love someone and you feel really good about it, you can invite them into your home, their home. You could go out to dinner, what have you. But if it's a very, very serious conversation and you need to have a mediator, you need to be in a neutral place where neither one of you have to revisit that place again. When you walk away, you walk away. So you have open and honest communication, and again, seek professional help where you need to, and having a mediator for whatever's necessary. Forgiveness is key. And don't be afraid to take notes wherever you have to, right? But what I want to talk about today, and just kind of highlighting that again, how do we rebuild when we've had brokenness with our children? Now, as parents, let's truly be honest. As wonderful as we have tried to be, and as great as we have tried to have the best intentions, we have not always done things perfectly. We haven't always been right, and we haven't always been wrong either. And we try our best as parents to try to keep our children from hitting a wall, from falling off the edge, from saving them from destruction. We try to keep them from making mistakes. And sometimes it feels like it's overbearing and it's too much. And sometimes it may not even seem like it's enough, because all of our children are different, especially if you have more than one. What you give to one, you can't necessarily give to the other. You love them all, but all of them need something different. I have 2 adults, and as much as they are alike, they are different. And I have to give both of them something different. And understanding that both of them are on a different journey. And even at the different ages that they've done things, they both have shown up differently in both of those different age groups, from teenage years going into adulthood. Both of those things have been different. But when we think about when we've had tension or some type of stressor in the relationships with our teenage to adult children, how do we rebuild that? Well, first, as parents, we have to acknowledge where we have been wrong. Hello, everyone. Thank y'all for coming in tonight. We have to acknowledge where we have been wrong, Because there have been times, even as with my adult children, I've had to apologize and say, yes, I was wrong. I did not do that right. I did not make the right decision. I did not say that the right way. And then, two, not to make excuses. When we're wrong, we're wrong. And also to help them to understand that it's all out of love, but it's also good to share with them from the point of reference that your perception has come from, not to change their perspective, but for them to understand your heart. And I think sometimes we don't share that because that means we got to reveal some of our stuff. Because when we share that, we're also revealing some of the mistakes that we made. And sometimes that's a good thing, because in that place of transparency, you letting them know, I made this mistake and I didn't want you to make that mistake. And this is what it looked like to me. And that was out of my perception. See, we view things through a certain lens, right? A lot of the decisions we make are based upon the perception that we have or our experiences that we have gone through. And that's the lens that we look through. And sometimes we have to take a pause to make sure what is the correct perception that I'm looking through. And how am I viewing this? And sometimes we have to take a step back to make sure we're not overthinking a situation as well. And it's okay to ask questions. But one thing I have learned, and I am learning, oh Lord, I am learning. I've got to give room for God to move, even with my adult children. Excuse me, with my adults. And I ain't children anymore. I've got to give room for God to move. Why? Because they are on their own journey. And I have found that when I find myself in a place of trying to overprotect, I'm pushing them further out than allowing myself to step back and let God intervene while I should be interceding. We're still talking about rebuilding. This is where me as a believer and as a parent and one who will fight for what's mine have had to learn how to surrender in a completely different way. To lean more into God and to lay more on my face before Him and intercede and let Him do the work. Because we can't control everything. And see, that's the other part. When we talk about rebuilding and we talk about we can't control someone else's perception and outlook and understanding. And sometimes we try to control other people's emotions and thought patterns and how they feel and think and how they want to do. We can't do that part. And that's that place of control we've got to let go of. We have to do our part. I'm going to love you the best that I can. I'm going to love you with what I know how to love you and ask you what's the best way for me to love you. But I'm also going to pray for you. But when we get in God's way, oh, when I tell you, you got to fight on your hands. For real. Because it stresses it even more. See, there are sometimes you have to just allow, you just got to let God just do it. You can't. You have to trust him to help you rebuild in the process. Because see, he has to work on everybody's heart. When we think about rebuilding anything that has been broken, especially in relationships, you need to have already been praying before you even have a conversation. Let's be real about that. Yes, prayer is the secret sauce. You need to have already been praying even before you even enter in the conversation. One, you need to first want to know and understand that God, is this even your will to even rebuild this relationship? Okay, God, it's your will to rebuild a relationship. Now I need you to work on both of our hearts to make sure that both of us are in the right place so that we can go through this process. Because if God is not in the midst of it, you better believe you're going to have some warfare on your hands. If you're not already praying and interceding for God to give you wisdom to navigate through it, you're going to constantly continue to hit a brick wall. And then you're going to get weary and you're going to be like, God, well, didn't you not tell me to do this? But did you do it with wisdom? See, sometimes we hear God say go and we don't check in for wisdom. We just get to running. You remember, y'all seen it? You got your little babies and their legs just, you holding them up in the air and their legs just get to going. Just legs just be running. And you put them down and they just take off and don't have nowhere to go. Don't know what direction they're going. And sometimes they're just running in circles. And that's exactly what we're doing when we go somewhere without wisdom. We got the zeal, but we have no knowledge. We running, but going nowhere. And when we're talking about rebuilding, really rebuilding, it takes a whole lot of wisdom. And you have to make sure you're doing it at the right time. It's not your timing. It's God's timing. Because see, we cannot anticipate how long it takes for someone to heal. Especially when we've been the offender. Especially when we were the person who caused the hurt or the harm. You know, it's amazing to me. When people have caused hurt and harm and they say, oh, you'll be all right. What? Do you not know how deeply that cut or hurt? I'm reading stuff too as I'm doing this. You're right. We have to ask for wisdom. And sometimes we can't say, oh, you'll be okay. You'll heal in 7 to 14 days. Just put this on and you'll be all right. No, because we don't necessarily know the other stuff that may be attached to that. Life experiences, triggers, whatever. And to just take people and say, oh, you'll be all right. You'll be okay. No, that's not necessarily so. And we have to pray that we don't hurt and harm people. Or even push, or even be the one to push people over the edge. with even the smallest things. I'm not saying anybody has to walk on eggshells. You should not have to be in any relationship where you have to walk on eggshells, but you do have to walk in wisdom. You do have to walk in the knowledge of understanding who a person is. But when we build relationships with honest communication and we live a life of forgiveness, it makes it so much easier. And when we're rebuilding, and we talked about it, acknowledge the issue, have open and honest communication, seek professional help when needed, make sure forgiveness is there at the forefront and at the foundation. And on the back end, you have to fortify it with forgiveness. Anytime you're in a place of repairing anything, you have to fortify it with forgiveness. That's yourself and your relationships. You have to fortify it with forgiveness. Rebuilding trust for yourself and for the other person. And to be able to communicate, this is what I need in order to trust you again. Don't be afraid to say, in order for me to begin to trust you again, this is what I need. And even that is a process. I forgive you, but it's going to take a minute for me to trust you. I forgive you, but you got to requalify for access. I forgive you, but this is now the new boundary. Those things are all okay for your mental clarity, peace, and health. At all costs, for you to be good, those things are okay. And we're even talking parent to adult children. And even if it was a parent who did something crazy to their adult children or child to a parent, it doesn't matter what type of relationship it is. You have to make sure that you are good and you're not putting yourself back in harm's way. We love everybody, but we also can learn how to love people from a distance if necessary. For safety reasons, we can do that. And those things are okay because it's about setting healthy boundaries. Many people can tell you, I have heard so many stories and being in this place of coaching and ministry. There's some things I could never share. But there are some horrific things that I have heard that no, I'm going to forgive because God says so, but you will never be a part of my life again. And I bid you Godspeed. And that was the right thing to do. But we're talking about those who want a relationship again and rebuilding. Now, as we cultivate this place of rebuilding trust, we have to also understand it's a process, it's going to take time. And sometimes it's going to have to be some reinforcement along the way because it's going to be some testing of the foundation, right? It's going to have to be some reinforcements there, some testing of the foundation. And it's going to have to be some reminders. This is what we agreed to. But see, because when the testing comes, We got to make sure that we've also dealt with those default settings that may be there, especially if something has been fresh and you hadn't been that far removed from it. You may automatically want to say the door. But when we said, okay, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to walk through this slowly, I'm going to walk through this lightly. And sometimes things can be going real good and the pace starts picking up and moving very fast. It's okay to slow it back down, that you don't get caught up in stuff moving too fast and you start missing what could be red flags again. Because remember, you're trusting a process again. And you've got to requalify. You got to reevaluate. You going in this thing with your eyes wide open. So you're looking at this from a different lens again. So you want to take your time and set your pace as you're rebuilding. Now, of course, in all of this rebuilding, there has to be patience and there has to be perseverance. Because again, the testing is going to be there. There's going to be reminders. We've got to fortify it with forgiveness. But also the best part, we have to reestablish new memories and new traditions. Anytime we're doing something new, we don't always throw the baby out with the bathwater, but there's some things we do need to do differently. Let's do something completely different. Let's not remind ourselves of that, because sometimes, remember, that's what got us here. That's what got us to this place. So let's not go back down that road. Let's eliminate that. Let's just pull that one up altogether. We don't even need that one no more. Let's reestablish something new. And when we begin to reestablish something new, it helps to pull out something new within us. But why? Because it's a new place of discovery. And we're not dealing with the reminder of looking at something familiar. That's the good part about establishing new things, because it doesn't keep you in this place of that looks familiar to me, and you have it, you're in side out mode for a long time. Because I remember this, I remember that. And it has nothing to do with it. And you start overthinking and you're in this cycle. There's sometimes you have to redecorate everything. Yeah, let's relay the foundation, but let's not keep any of the old stuff. Some things are good for a reminder to show how far we have come, but some things we don't keep, because it's like, if that's going to take me back or trigger me back to an old place, I may not need it. And that has to come to a place of agreement. We also have to know, what are the things that are going to trigger me? We have to be honest about our triggers. That's that great part about awareness. What are my triggers? And where do my triggers take me? And when you can trigger for me, it helps them to watch out for it and or not do it, so that you're not triggered. Now, the key to that is, if you have expressed what your triggers are and you have shared these do's and don'ts, and you have those that consistently do the don'ts, you might want to reevaluate the relationship. Because if you have people that are intentionally doing the don'ts, that relationship you may not want to do. Especially when you've kindly, courageously, and honestly shared it up front. These are the don'ts, and they're intentionally doing the don'ts. Don't do that relationship. Because manipulation is not what you need. Not in a place of healing, not in a place of growing. That's not what you need. So we create new memories. Gratitude and appreciation is the best thing you could ever give yourself. As we're rebuilding, it is so important to encourage and appreciate the growth, not to back end it with sarcasm. Y'all know how we do. Not to back end it with well, you should have been doing this long time. Nope, not to back end it with none of that. But true gratitude and appreciation for, I thank you. I acknowledge the progress. I appreciate you thinking of me. I thank you for doing this, that, and so. Those things go a long way. And sometimes it's in the smallest things. Ooh, babe, I see you. You did what? Y'all know everyone likes to feel good. Everyone likes to be encouraged. Everyone likes to be hyped up. For those of us engaged spouses, you need a personal hype person. Nobody else should be hyping up your spouse more than you. Nobody. You are each other's hype person. You keep each other hyped up. Should nobody else out hype you for your person? I gave that to you for free. I got a story for that too, but I won't tell it today. Make sure you keep your person hyped up so don't nobody else hype them up, okay? All right. Embrace the change. So, as we grow and we develop, we begin to shift, we begin to grow, we begin to lean into who we are, we begin to lean into the newness. And it can feel different because we're so used to the old stuff. So we have to shift with the shift. We have to move with the new movement. We have to embrace and lean into what's happening that's different. And we have to embrace all of the newness and the change. We have to evolve and elevate as we are growing. That's what all of this is about. We evolve and elevate and we produce greater things. So, as we prepare our families, as we prepare our relationships, how do we evolve in these places? By creating these new spaces of love, of integrity, of growth, of appreciation, of encouragement, bit by bit, moment by moment, and celebrate along the way. That's how we do it. And sometimes we take a minute and evaluate. All right, it's been great the last 3 to 6 months. What have we been done that's helping us to win? How do we rinse and repeat that and continue to make it we duplicate that, and to make sure it is a part of our lives. Because there's some things that won't work, and there's some things that will. But how do we continue to rinse and repeat the stuff that is working, and to make sure that this is what we're going to do because this works for us? To fortify the relationship, to make it stronger. How do we continue to make it sacred? To make and nurture what it is that we're doing to make sure it continues to be healthy. Anytime, if any one of you have gardened before, my mother has an amazing green thumb. I don't know how she does it. Good Lord. She could take a teeny weeny little something and grow the biggest thing. I can't do it, but she can. But anytime you transplant, or you have taken a plant and you repot it, it has to take root, because you've broken it from its normal root system to now it has its own new root system. And now it has to take root, and it has to develop its now own nurturing system. So now the watering has to be a little different. The feeding has to be a little different, because it now has to gain its strength in a different way to grow. It's the same thing when you're rebuilding. When you've taken something that was broken, you're taking now the good parts out of what was broken. Now you're putting it in a new place to regrow it. And you've transplanted it into now something that was broken into something now new that's healthy. It now has to take root. So the nurturing part is going to be a lot more rigorous. It's going to be a lot more often. It's going to take a lot more maintenance, because it's going to have to make sure it gets the foundational roots. Is going to have to lock in. So it's going to have to take more time to make sure that the roots get strong so it can grow big and healthy. So in the beginning, it may seem a little tedious. But when it gets strong, and when it begins to grow and flourish, you'll come back and you see leaves sprouting all over the place. And then you start seeing fruit all over the place. Because we've taken the time to nurture and appreciate and speak life. Speak life to those places that we are now rebuilding all over again. All right. Well, I hope that this has been good for y'all. I just want to take some time out on this Labor Day to be here with you all as we are rebuilding our families, and especially with our adult children or other family members that we may have. I hope that this was as good for you as it was for me. If you have any questions, please ask them. I will definitely reply. I am looking to do a beta class on Master Your Emotions, Master Your Life here at the latter part of the year. If you would like to be a part of that beta class, send me a message and I would definitely reach back out to you before I put out the mass information, because I want to make sure that we have the right people in the room. Because when I do offer this to the public, it's going to be at a different price. So for those of you who are going to be a part of the beta class, it's going to be 12 to 16 weeks of teaching how to master our emotions in every part of our life, from relationships to money, to our jobs, to how we show up every day, to our eating habits, and all the decisions that we make. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you all again next week. So join me here live here on YouTube and on Facebook and in the Shiro Society Facebook group. But remember, we are all here to live an abundant, beautiful life. And when we evolve and elevate to our highest self, we can live in that place of true abundance, especially when we learn how to master our emotions and master our life. I love you all. Take care and have a great evening.